Hello, brothers. I am here with another horror thriller, A Visit to Wood. The movie is adapted from the horror novel Wood at the End of the World. The high-energy ending of the whole process is beyond everyone's expectations. Without further ado, the story begins. Eric and Andrew took their adopted daughter Xiaowen from the orphanage to a secluded cabin for vacation. Xiaowen was playing alone on the grass outside the house. Then a tall and strong man walked towards her and greeted her familiarly. Xiaowen remembered her father telling her not to talk to strangers, but the strong man said that they would soon become good friends. Then you would not be a stranger. The strong man said that his name was Da Zhuang. When he was a child, he often grabbed obstacles like him. Xiaowen let down his guard and talked about his two fathers. Although his family was different, Xiaowen felt that having two fathers was a happy thing. At this time, Da Zhuang heard the movement. Looking into the distance, Xiaowen followed his gaze and saw three people with various weapons walking towards them. Da Zhuang said that they were his colleagues and came here with very important work to do. Xiaowen realized that something was wrong and turned to walk towards Xiaomu. Da Zhuang did not chase him, but asked Xiaowen to tell his father not to resist and let them in. Otherwise, they would have to break in by themselves. After Xiaowen entered the house, he told his fathers about his experience and warned them that there were several people with weapons outside. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a knock on the door. Da Zhuang politely introduced himself and the others and asked the two to open the door and let them in, hoping to talk face to face. Eric also politely declined the other party. He did not want their vacation to be disturbed by outsiders, and each of them seemed to be holding a weapon. Da Zhuang explained that those were not weapons, but tools. They came here to save a large group of people. Eric said he would call the police, but the other party already knew that this place was remote, and there was no mobile phone signal at all, and the telephone line had been cut off by them. There was no movement in the four-person room outside. He didn't want to wait anymore, and tried to break the door lock and force his way in. Andrew lied again that he had a gun, but Eric asked quietly and found out that the gun was in the truck outside, and he didn't have it with him. The people outside stopped answering and started to force the lock. Seeing this, the two of them directly blocked the door with a sofa and picked up an iron rod. They looked around nervously. When several people outside acted separately and came to the surroundings of the house, the three of them were ready to do their best to open the door and run to the car outside to escape. But it was too late. There was a woman holding a weapon staring at them in panic. Eric raised his weapon towards the woman without hesitation. The two of them fought fiercely for a while. The moment the woman fell to the ground, she took the opportunity to stretch out her weapon and tripped Eric to the ground. The back of her head made close contact with the floor, and she instantly fell into a coma. The woman said that she was a nurse and could help her, but Andrew waved the iron rod in his hand to stop her from getting close. She wanted to wake up her lover, but a man suddenly broke through the window and broke in. Andrew and the other party started a fierce fight. A few punches knocked the man so hard that he couldn't find a mouth. But at this time, Da Zhuang and another accomplice had broken into the room and surrounded her, holding a small bow in their hands. Andrew looked at the weapons in their hands and the unconscious lover on the ground. People could only give up resistance. When Eric woke up from his coma, he found himself and his lover tied to a chair. The person who attacked her was bandaging the wound on the back of her head. Da Zhuang said earnestly that they had no ill intentions and didn't even know the two people before coming here. The four of them were just ordinary people. Then something happened that stunned them. The four intruders stood in a row and began to introduce themselves. The black woman was named Lima, a resident nurse. 2 days ago, she spent all her savings and ran here from Southern California just to come to this cabin and talk to them. Da Zhuang was a second-grade teacher at a school. The man from Lubazi Lake was named Raymond and was a gas company worker. It was the long-haired woman's turn to introduce herself. At this time, Eric interrupted them because he saw them introducing themselves, so he asked if they belonged to an organization that needed to recruit people. Even if they wanted to recruit, there was no need to use such means, but the woman seemed to be in a hurry and introduced herself as Adrian, a chef in a Mexican restaurant. Before she finished, Da Zhuang suddenly reminded her that the time was up. He stood in front of the three people solemnly and said that the four of them came here to prevent the end of the world, but they had to get help from the two of them. Eric immediately cursed him for being mentally ill. But Da Zhuang was not only brainless, but he knelt down in front of the two of them and asked them in a mysterious way to choose one person who was willing to give up sex and kill him. If they were unwilling to choose, the world will be destroyed, and only the three of them will survive. But more than 7 billion people on the earth will die. Andrew explained that they did nothing wrong, so why should they bear such a responsibility with their lives? Da Zhuang said that they could not choose who among the three to sacrifice, and they could not commit suicide to sacrifice. Andrew answered very firmly that they would not choose anyone, even if the whole world was in danger. Seeing his firm attitude, Raymond thought it was a waste of time, but Da Zhuang continued to persuade them. Before coming here, the four of them had seen the same fantasy, all of which were about the destruction of the world, so they found each other and came to this small valley. They didn't know why they were chosen, but in the illusion. First, the tsunami submerged the city, and then a terrible plague broke out around the world. The sky would collapse like pieces, and the whole world would eventually fall into eternal darkness. He asked the two again if they were willing to make a choice, otherwise they would release the plague for the sins of mankind. Seeing that the two were still indifferent, Da Zhuang retreated to the back. Raymond stood in front of them with a hoe. Just when Eric and Andrew thought he was going to take action, Adrian picked up Xiaowen from behind Andrew. He struggled desperately and cursed, but the other party put Xiaowen back in his arms. Raymond knelt on the ground with a painful and helpless look on his face. He took out a white cloth bag from his pocket behind him and slowly put it over his head and asked them not to close their eyes and watch carefully. Then Eric's eyes were blinded by the sunlight behind him. He repeatedly told himself that it was not real, but when he opened his eyes, he saw the two men behind him raise their weapons and smashed them at Raymond's head. Then Da Zhuang used an axe to dodge the knife. Xiaowen was so scared that she hugged Andrew's neck tightly and dared not watch this terrible scene. After the three men dealt with the corpses and bloodstains on the ground, Da Zhuang turned on the TV and the TV began to broadcast an emergency report that a huge tsunami had occurred on the west coast of the United States. Da Zhuang said that it was caused by Raymond's 7 surnames, but Andrew still didn't believe it. Da Zhuang asked them to continue watching. In the camera, there was laughter on the beach for a second, and then a tsunami swept in from a distance. Da Zhuang and the other two had tears in their eyes. It was exactly the same beach they saw in the illusion. People were running in panic, but the seawater several stories high swept away everything. Da Zhuang said that they had to make a decision before tomorrow morning. Choose one of the 7 surnames to save the world, or watch the end of the world come. Andrew still didn't believe it, but Eric's heart was shaken. Lena helped Eric change the bandage while talking about herself. She knew that their behavior would probably be regarded as religious lunatics, but in fact, she had never been to church and was an atheist until one day an illusion appeared. She came here from her hometown and saw that every person and every street on the way had appeared in the illusion. On the other side, Xiaowen crawled out from under the wooden house under Andrew's instructions, but the sound of opening the door still alarmed Da Zhuang, and he caught Xiaowen soon. When Andrew came back, he thought of the fight they had with someone in a bar 2 years ago. He thought that the dead Raymond was that person. Eric was seriously injured at that time. In order to protect his lover, he started boxing and bought a pistol to carry with him. He thought that everything was a trap. Da Zhuang and the other two were deceived by Raymond, but Da Zhuang took out a photo of the students in the class he tutored. He wanted the children's laughter to continue to echo in this world. This was the purpose of his coming here. At this time, Adrian stood in front and talked about how he imagined that he was holding a child and was burned to death over and over again in the fire. The screams of the child's tragic death were still echoing in his ears, but Andrew kept persuading Eric not to be deceived by them and scolded them for being delusional and evil coaches. Seeing this, Adrian Ryan had no choice but to repeat what Raymond had done. He knelt down and put on a hood himself. Then he was killed by Da Zhuang and Lena in front of them. After cleaning up the bodies, they turned on the TV news again. It reported that a plague targeting children had broken out in 3 countries around the world. The number of infected people was increasing. Andrew thought it was a video they had recorded in advance, and Eric quietly asked Xiaowen to shout to attract Da Zhuang's attention and took the opportunity to cut the rope with a knife. He picked up the weapon on the ground and pointed it at the 2 people. Andrew also took off the rope and rushed out of the tomb. Lena followed closely and knocked Andrew to the ground and persuaded him not to run away. Andrew grabbed the mud and threw it into the other's eyes, then took the opportunity to escape to the car to search for the pistol. Lena didn't dare to hurt him, but didn't know what to do. Andrew stopped her from taking out the gun, loaded the bullets, and shot him in the head. Frightened, Lena fled into the woods in a hurry. Andrew saw this and ran back to the tomb house and pointed a gun at Da Zhuang, who was confronting Eric. Da Zhuang tried to persuade him, but Andrew didn't listen at all. At this time, Da Zhuang said that the time for the next sacrifice had come and asked them if they could make a choice. Andrew, who had a gun in his hand, of course refused and wanted to take Eric and Xiaowen away. At this time, Lena rushed in screaming and was shot in the chest by Andrew and fell down. Then he used a gun to force Da Zhuang into the bathroom and held him up, but not long after, he heard the sound of the bathroom window breaking. Andrew opened the door and found that Yulian had been pulled up. He was afraid that Da Zhuang was hiding inside, so he fired a shot, but there was no movement inside. Just as he was about to open the lid, when they were at Yulian, Da Zhuang knocked him to the ground and knocked away Eric, who wanted to help. Da Zhuang grabbed the gun and forced the 2 back to the living room. He ignored his burden and asked them to turn on the TV. Andrew was ready to swear to never do it, but Eric took the initiative to turn on the TV news. It was reporting that more than 700 planes around the world lost control and fell from the sky into balls of fire. The police believed that it might be a cyber attack by a hacker organization. Eric was deeply shocked, and Da Zhuang's next move made the two even more strange. He and the news anchor on TV spoke the news at the same time, as if they had rehearsed it for countless years. Andrew couldn't stand it and smashed the TV. He would never believe it was true. He persuaded Eric to leave with him. Da Zhuang took them to after reaching the platform behind, he asked Xiaowen to leave first. He didn't know how to convince the two. He talked about his beloved students again. He didn't want to see them die one by one like in the illusion. He let Andrew and Eric decide the next path by themselves. Then he slit his throat. Just as Andrew picked up the pistol and was about to leave, Eric stood in the middle of the living room and said that these 4 people didn't hurt them or rob them of money. Their actions reminded us of all aspects of human nature. Raymond's evil, Adrian's pregnancy, Lena's recovery, Da Zhuang's teaching. The 4 of them are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. They use sacrifice to awaken themselves. In an instant, he felt that he saw the future, watching Xiaowen grow up and find his love, Andrew and him together. After speaking, he raised his hand. Andrew's hand made him shoot. Andrew burned the cabin and all the bodies sadly, and drove away with Xiaowen, Da Zhuang, in their car. When they came to a restaurant on the highway, they found that everyone inside was silent and watching the TV news. The various plagues, disasters, and accidents in the world had strangely stopped. Although there were countless casualties before, the situation was under control now. Andrew shed tears when he saw this scene. It was Eric's sacrifice that prevented the end of the world. What Da Zhuang said was true. He returned to the car and found the luggage and documents of the 4 people in the back seat. As expected, as several people said, it seemed that they had already known their tragic secrets, but they came to the cabin without hesitation to save the world. This article ends here. See you next time.